we come to learn your word. O God, we sing our praise to you. O God, we come to worship you. O God, we come to praise your name. O God, we come to learn your word. O God, we sing our praise to you. O God, you are the only God. O God, we know we are the church. We gather here in Jesus' name. O God, we give our thanks to you. O God, we come to worship you. O God, we come to worship you. O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways. And step by step you lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways. And step by step you lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. And I will follow you all of my days. And I will follow you all of my days. And step by step you lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. O my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation. All ye who hear, now to his temple draw near. Join me in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord, who o'er all things so wondrously reigneth. Shieldeth thee under his wings, yea, so gently sustaineth. Hast thou not seen how thy desires have been granted in what he ordaineth? Praise to the Lord, who doth prosper thy work and defend thee. Surely his goodness and mercy here daily attend thee. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do, if with his love he befriend thee. Praise to the Lord, oh let all that is in me adore him. All that hath life and breath, come now with praises before him. Let the amen sound from his people again, gladly forever adore him. Tempted and tried, we're oft made to wonder why it should be thus all the day long, while there are others living about us, never molested, going the wrong. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sun. sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. When death has come and taken our loved ones, it leaves our home so lonely and drear. Then do we wonder why others prosper, living so wicked year after year. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. When we see Jesus coming in glory, when he comes from his home in the sky, then we shall meet him in that bright mansion. We'll understand it all by and by. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night around me be falling, but he bids me go through the voice of woe. His voice to me is calling.
All right, so 2 weeks ago we began Ruth, and we had, yes, Tony?
Kyle's whole family is going to Australia.
Okay,
Not just him.
all right. So as we began this study 2 weeks ago, we introduced it, and I don't want to go back through all that, but just remember, the family is from Bethlehem, which is just a couple of miles outside. At least back then it was. Now it just all runs together. You don't know when you're in Jerusalem or Bethlehem today in the modern city, but it's a couple miles outside the city, and so they're going to, because of the famine, go to Moab, and eventually, of course, they're going to come back and settle back in Judah, and so. All right, and we introduced some of the themes and some of the structure of the book, and I'm not going to rehash any of that. You've probably forgot it, and we want to get in the book anyway, so you can go back and watch it. I think it's on our YouTube channel. These classes are, and sermons, of course. All right, so Ruth chapter 1. Let's go ahead and read let's see here. Who'd like to get verses 1 and 2? Okay, Kathy, and then someone get 3 through 5. Okay, Marcia? All right, Ruth 1, 1 and 2, and then 3 through 5. Okay, Kathy?
Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Abimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the name of his sons were Mahlon and Chilon, Ephraimites. I got the ones with all the hard
Yeah,
names.
you're doing
Of
good.
Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to the country of Moab and remained there.
Later, Naomi's husband Elimelech died, so only Naomi and her 2 sons were left. Her sons married women from the country of Moab. One wife's name was Orpah, and the other's name was Ruth. They lived in Moab about 10 years. Then Mahlon and Chilion also died, so Naomi was left alone without her husband or her 2 sons.
Okay, so we go back and we remember the historical background that it tells us, of course, in verse 1, it was during the time of the judges. And so we touched on this 2 weeks ago just briefly, but again, what was that time like for God's people, for Israel? Period of the judges. Most of them were evil. Okay, so what do we think about often? These cycles, what do we mean by the cycles they went through in Israel?
Fall away from God, and things would get really bad, and they would cry out to God, and God would send a judge, and they would come back. But they kept repeating the cycle.
Yeah, God would give them into their hands when they were unfaithful, into the hands of their enemies, right? And they would be what? Oppressed. The people would come in. You remember in the story, what is it, Gideon, where they're hiding out, and they have to. What's he doing? Remember?
He's threshing wheat in the winepress.
Yeah. He's doing it in secret because they're like the enemies come out and just devour it, and so they can't even produce. There's they're oppressed. And so they go through these cycles, and so when it tells us that there was a famine in the land, we more than likely, we go back to Deuteronomy and the book of Leviticus, what does God tell them? If you're faithful to me, what will happen in the land? What will I do for you? Bless you. What does that look like? Okay, and what are they? What's their economy? They make what? They live off the what? The land. Agricultural. And so what that looks like is God's going to what? Cause there to be what? A bountiful crops.
And he sends the rain when they need it.
Yeah. When they're not faithful, what's the opposite's going to be?
Drought
Drought
and famine.
and famine. So what do we likely understand when it says there's a famine? Where are they at in the cycles? Probably somewhere in, kind of in that down part. They're either getting real cranked, started into unfaithfulness, or they're in real bad unfaithfulness. And these typically, these long periods would typically be about 40 years that this cycle would kind of run through. I mean, don't just think, oh, they would be a little famine or they'd be oppressed for 3-6 months. No. This would be years often. You know, you get unfaithfulness and idolatry going in your community. You don't just get that out real quick, do you? It is a generational what? Effect. And that, of course, there's a lot there for us. I've talked about that before. It is very, very difficult to get that out. And so this takes a long period of time. And so there's a famine in the land. And we're told about one of those families that's facing this man, Elimelech, and his family. Of course, his wife, Naomi, their 2 sons, Mahlon, Chilion, and of course they're going to be eventually married to these 2 Moabite women. But they went to Moab to live there. Put yourself in their sandals. What factors? Why would they? I mean, how hard of a decision would that be? Again, Moab, are they the friends of the Israelites? No, they're not. This is a foreign nation that in the past, remember, have not exactly been friendly to Israel. I mean, they tried to seduce them at one time. Israel asked if they could pass through their land, and they said no. I mean, they have not been friendly. And so why not just hunker down and stick it out? I mean, what are some factors? Put yourself in their sandals. Again, what would go through your minds? What do you think they might think, or you might think?
They must be starving.
Okay, that tells us maybe how what the condition is. Desperate times, what's the old saying? Call. You ever been there? I mean, you ever been at the end? I mean, you ran through all what you could do, and now it is down to there are no good ideas. They're all bad ideas. And this would be up there as a bad, this is not good. This is, you're going, what are you leaving, first of all? I mean, your own people? I mean, there's safety in numbers, aren't there? There's safety in that support. But it's tough. It is tough. There's
Kind of like in the Depression when all the people
okay.
traveled to California because they heard there was work there.
Right.
Evidently, for some reason, he thinks conditions are better in Moab.
Yeah. I mean, he's got to at least think
Judah right now.
it's got to be better than sitting here and dying. I mean, it's got to be that kind of a situation. And so I think that, yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Also, the Moabites are going to be wicked religiously.
Yes, good point.
You're taking your young sons that apparently marrying age into a land where there is idolatry is the norm, and you're opening up to that influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like the missionaries of today,
Right.
you don't go somewhere where God is central, you go somewhere where it's not. So perhaps they had prayed for guidance and maybe God told them to go there because not everybody in Moab was horrible.
Right, sure.
Like today, everybody's
Yeah, that's a good, interesting point. Yeah, Tony?
And also, I believe it's probably the providence of God for them to meet Ruth, and Ruth to be in the genealogy of Jesus.
Sure.
So there is that God sent.
Yeah. How much they understood that, right? I mean, we're not sure what, it just may have all been about a matter of we've got to go or we're going to starve. I mean, but maybe there was that element of, we trust God. God will provide for us if we, you just got to imagine the conversations that Elimelech, Naomi, what they were thinking, in doing this, and all the different factors that are there. And again, we have to think about that. Let's think about that for a few seconds. The decisions we make have an impact, right? Now, they can be small, small decisions can have, or they can be big decisions. And you go ahead.
Every decision we make,
Right.
hopefully a good one.
That's right. Yeah. And so what are factors that should come into play when we make decisions? I mean, what should we keep at the forefront? What are some things we need to?
We'll be pleasing to God.
We'll be pleasing to God. Okay. What else? Things that need to factor in. Have to pray. Yeah. There was Dolores, you saying that I had that written down here. Somebody has said, and I don't know who said it, so I got it from someone, so I'm borrowing it from them, and they probably borrowed it, so who knows who. The best time to make a decision is when you don't have to make a decision. I thought that was pretty good. Often decisions that are what? Rushed or desperation, oftentimes can be very, not always work out. And so we have to factor in God in the equation, prayer, as was mentioned. Other things, what do you think factor in decisions? Our families, yeah. And Tony mentioned that, the impact. They're taking boys that are marrying age. And what are some New Testament scriptures that come to mind? What did Jesus say in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5? You are the salt. That's kind of what Dan was talking about the light of the world. So where can I be salt and light? Is this decision going to shine light on the gospel? Think about that. Is this going to, am I going to be able to be salt and influence in this regard? How about 1 Corinthians 10 and 31? Whatever you do, what? Someone mentioned this. Do all for the what? Glory of God. Is this decision going to glorify God? Is God going to be praised? Is God going to be glorified? Will He receive the honor? And then in Philippians 4, 6, and 7, be anxious for nothing. And so we are to seek the Lord in prayer. That's what he talked about. Kevin?
I think too often we make a decision and then we spend the rest of our life looking backwards.
Yep.
And this proves that that's not should not be the case because everything worked out. But even if it doesn't work out, you made the best decision at the best time with the best thoughts that you had. And we need to quit worrying about what happened and start moving forward.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I really do. However, on the front end, we need to think about our decisions. And we need to see it through the lens of glorifying God. Am I going to be able to be salt and light? Someone mentioned the family. Rhonda had mentioned that, and Tony had mentioned that. Making decisions that are, well, I'll make more money. This will just be as simple as that. We'll make more money, right? Watch out. You ever taken a job just because of money? And then later you were like, that wasn't the best decision, right? Maybe it wasn't good for me, my family, my marriage. And so I do think that when we, in faith and prayer, as Kevin said, we make our decision. We're never going to be perfect. We trust that God can work through even our bad, poor decisions. But just an opportunity to remind ourselves of decisions in life and kind of the lens through. Again, we don't know what was through. Maybe Elimelech went through all of this. Maybe he went through none of this. We're not sure exactly. But there's an opportunity for us to think about in our lives those kind of decisions. Okay. And so again, we kind of introduced to the family there. And now let's note here. Kind of in verses 3, it begins to unravel. Should be 3 through 15, but we're going to kind of look at this. What happens here? I mean, things really begin to unravel. And of course, it starts in verse 3 with what? Her husband Elimelech dies. We're not given any details, any information about the circumstances, the what, the why, any of that. Even the timeline itself is, we do know that they're going to, her sons marry these two Moabite women, and after they had lived there about 10 years, the boys die. So we don't know the time exact between Elimelech, these boys marry these two Moabite women, and then after 10 years they die. And then they're going to make the decision eventually to go back to Bethlehem. This could be 10 years, this could be 15 years, this could be 20 years. We don't know exactly how long the time frame is, other than at least 10. We know there's a long period of time, at least 10 years, that they're there. And so it begins to unravel. Why is this bad? Again, her sons have married these Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth, and then it says that after they'd lived there 10 years, they die. So why is this a major issue?
Her husband or sons take care of her.
Okay.
She's not there, so she doesn't take care.
Yeah, the livelihood of the family. What else is involved in that? The protection of, physically, right? It's a dangerous world. It's a dangerous world today, isn't it? Right? And we've got, law enforcement and security cameras and, people, concealing weapons. I mean, we've got a lot of protection. We've got a lot of things, but it's dangerous still. And you better believe it was dangerous then. And so there's safety issues involved in that. There's financial concern, the future to the family. I mean, that's going to come up in the kinsman redeemer. But what's at stake now is Elimelech's name can what? Can disappear. I mean, all the community, the family here is can be lost. And physically, this is really bad that this is that they're faced with, and so you can only imagine what they're trying to process this in this regard. Again, we don't know the timeline. Elimelech dies. The boys marry these Moabite women, and then after they had lived there 10 years. The two boys die. And again, we don't know the circumstances. We don't know if it was an act of violence or sickness or what a disease. We're not sure exactly what it was. But Naomi's left now without her 2 sons and her husband. It indicates there. Let's keep reading now. Let's do 6 through 15. Let's get somebody do. Let's see here. Let's do 6 through 9. Who'd like to get that for us? 6 through 9. Okay, Dolores. And then somebody get, let's see here, 10 through 12. Who'd like to get that for us? 10 through 12. Okay, Roy. And then 13 through 15. Who'd like to finish out? Okay, Ron. All right, let's read this kind of 6 through 15. Dolores, you were first. Okay.
Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the land of Moab, for she had heard in the land of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. So she departed from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept.
And they said to her, "Surely we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight, and should also bear sons."
Would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me. For this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people, and her gods go back with her."
Okay, and so you have Naomi, as she's in Moab, heard that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them. So let's piece together Judges again and these cycles. The people are faithful to God. The Lord blesses them. But often, when there's prosperity, we have to be careful, because what do we tend to sometimes forget when it comes to God? We kind of forget him. God's the provider. We can do things our way. And so they go and they start to go into apostasy. And then, as we said, what? God raises up what? Their enemies. God does not prosper them. And now the people are oppressed. And this will happen over years. The people will cry out to God. God will raise up a judge. That's like a military ruler, a deliverer. And they will overcome their enemies, try to get the people back on track, but that's not always the case in Judges. It's pretty messy. And then they will be prospering again. So when it says that Naomi's heard the Lord's provided aid for his people, what where are we at in that period now of the cycle? They're
A time when they're turning back to God.
turning back to God, and God is providing. God is bringing, prosperity. God's providing food. He's providing aid for his people. And so she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. And so she's got her two daughters-in-law, and they're going to head back to the land of Judah. But Naomi is going to say to them, she's going to tell them what?
To go back.
Yeah.
There's no way she can provide husbands for them or even a livelihood.
Yeah. And just as we said, we talked about what's the reverse true now is as Elimelech was going into not necessarily friendly territory, right? What would Ruth and Orpah be walking into? Not friendly territory. And so it's just the same. And on top of that, as Naomi's telling her, I can't provide, are you going to sit around and wait? If I did enough of this could, are you going to, and if I was pregnant right now, there's nothing here. You need to go back. You need to find your security and safety with your people and your land. And I love what she says here, because this is going to show up several times here, the hesed, the loving kindness of God. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. I mean, what does that tell us a little bit about Orpah and Ruth's character? Their respect for her. What kind of wives were they? They must have been good wives, loyal wives.
Evidently took care of their husbands when they were ill before they lost them.
Yeah, and
Just good people.
do what?
They were just good
Yeah, and I like the point that was made about, there's good people, at least people who are decent people everywhere. And this is certainly the case here, that God is provided for this family, even with their sons, as Tony said, even though it's a country that doesn't worship God. And so they've been kind to her. That's going to come up, of course, throughout the book. We're going to see that. Their kindness to her, Ruth's kindness to Naomi, Boaz's kindness to Ruth. I mean, you're going to see this that's the word we get, this hesed, this loving kindness of God. I think I've mentioned it's about, translated in the King James, about 13 different ways. It's the loving kindness of God. And so she says, you do that. You've been kind to me. May the Lord grant each of you that you'll find rest in the home of another husband. And so there's no ill will here. Go ahead, Tony. Okay, Rhonda, yeah.
Well, at this point, Naomi, does she believe that God, where it says the Lord has raised his hand against her, does she believe that God caused her situation, or she just
Yeah, Naomi is,
for herself?
yeah, that's a good, so Naomi can be a little tricky to deal with. You can be really hard on her if you want to. I mean, you can judge her. She opens herself up because of what she says. I mean, she goes a step further really than Job. I mean, was Job kind of pointed with God? Yeah, and Naomi's just there even more so. The Lord has dealt what? Harsh with me. She's even changed her name. Her whole attitude has been reflected on, I'm bitter, what God has done to me. And so, yes, Rhonda, we're not sure if she flat out blames God or, but she's definitely, she's struggling.
But she's not being selfish. She's
No.
not asking her daughters-in-law to go with her.
No.
So I just wondered how.
Yeah, and there's no indication she's even turned her back on God. Remember, Job's wife said, curse God and die. I would say Naomi is somewhere between Job and what Job's wife said. Job's wife was like, curse God and die. Naomi's not quite there, but she's close. She's somewhere in that, she's bitter.
And she's still grieving.
She's grieving, and that's a great point, Rhonda. Which means we need to allow what? For people? Tolerance. Can God handle it? Can God handle it? Yeah, He can handle it. Matter of fact, what's He say in the book of Psalms often? What's the Psalms? Some of those Psalms are pretty what? They're crying out to God in lament. What's a lament? When someone is lamenting. What are they? They're sad, but they're not just sad. They're wailing, and they're often pointed. Why has this happened? I am angry. I am this. And the Psalms will often have the writer crying out to God in frustration. And God He recorded it for us, right? I mean, He allowed by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit for us to have those Psalms, which tell us that even in our bitterness, in our despair, in our emotions, we turn to who? We turn to God in that. And so the worst thing sometimes you can ever tell someone who's going through that is, don't say that. Don't feel that way. Have you ever had someone, no, don't say that. Don't blame God. I get what we're trying to do and helping them, but sometimes we just need to sit with people in their raw emotions. And I think Naomi, again, that's where we can be too hard on her probably and say, boy, she just got real bitter with all of this. We don't want to justify either and say it's okay to lay it at the feet of God. I mean, that's not right either. And what does God have to do to Job's attitude at the end of the book, kind of? Does Job have to have an attitude adjustment? Is Naomi going to have an attitude adjustment? I think so. And of course, where do they both end up? Job, Naomi, it's going to end up good.
Well, and Ruth's love and caring for her, I think that...
Yes. Yeah. She's going to see God. Sometimes when a person can't see God, maybe all they can see is God's people, right? Maybe and I've known people in the church that have said, I've got issues right now in my heart with my thoughts and feelings towards God. But they're still worshiping because there's people in that church that are showing them God, even if they're struggling with God issues. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
The verse talks about where God disciplines those He loves.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think of that as like a punishment, a bad thing.
Right.
Kind of like I tell my kids sometimes is in Job's case, he needed a reminder.
Right.
Who created the earth? Who made the moon? Just all these things that God has done. And sometimes my kids, they'll run into something and I say, every now and then God will give you a reminder.
Mm-hmm.
He's in charge.
Yeah.
Come back to that. And I said, you'll get back to that.
Yeah, and I think it's clear Naomi's she's going to go through that transformation, that process herself. But yes, Rhonda, she's struggling mightily with all of this. But it hasn't soured her, again, in her love and kindness towards her daughter-in-laws. And so she is, she tells them to go back. There's nothing, there's no hope here. It is more bitter for me than for you because the Lord's hand is turned against me. And again, keep in mind, too, in their society and their understanding, God even Himself, what if we just said, if you're faithful to me, you'll prosper. And so they kind of was built in their mindset. What does Jesus have to deal with? The attitudes of, remember the man who was blind? And they asked, who sinned, right? So what is Job's friends making that common assumption that, right, stuff is happening to you because we understand that if you're not faithful to God, God will, punish you. And so we also have to have, Naomi is the product of that culture and that thinking that absolutely thinks like that. And so, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, sorry. That's a pretty good, cool thing for the Christians, talking about Job and his friends were trying to put that on, what have you done, what have you done? Is we know the beginning. We know that Satan came to
Right,
God.
yeah.
And God even said, consider Job how great he is.
Yeah.
And so we know that all the bad things that happen,
Yeah.
they're from Satan.
And yeah, that's a great point. And Job, by the way, Job is in the text is never told. There's no that he's ever that conversation took place, right, between Satan and the Lord. He's not told me. Maybe that's happened with Elimelech with Satan? I don't know. We just don't know. But either way, they're struggling. And so she's going to say, we're going to see this emotional departure. And I want to talk a little about that next week. Orpah, let's not shortchange Orpah, because she's not so easily determined to go back, is she? And so both of these Moabite women, but of course Ruth is going to cling and not be deterred. And so we'll look at that and finish chapter 1 probably next week. We'll see if we can get through the end of chapter 1 next week. All right, appreciate you guys being here.
You're my God, you're altogether loving, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Beauty that made this heart adore you, hope of a life spent with you. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Say